I never thought betrayal could have a soundtrack, but that night, Thanksgiving night, the room was full of laughter, wine glasses clinking, cheesy holiday music in the background, and the sound of my own pride being gutted. The dining room was packed. My in-laws, her friends, even a few of mine. I had paid for everything. The catered turkey, the bartenders, the DJ, even the stupid fall-themed decorations my wife insisted on. Her name's Jessica, by the way. Beautiful, fiery, wild Jessica. The woman who once cried when I brought her soup while she was sick. Now, she was laughing as her sister handed me a shirt that said in big, bold letters, "Biggest disappointment." Everyone roared. Her brother Tyler nearly choked on a deviled egg. Even Jessica clapped like it was the highlight of the evening. I just stood there, dead still, the shirt hanging from my fingers like a rag soaked in acid. "It's just a joke, babe," she giggled, brushing past me with a wine glass in hand and zero respect in her eyes. "Loosen up." I didn't argue. I didn't scream. I didn't flip the table, though God knows I wanted to. Instead, I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a neatly folded stack of papers. Thick, heavy, the kind that changed lives. I looked Jessica in the eyes, smiled calmly, and tore the papers in half, slow and deliberate. You could have heard the rip over the music. Then I turned, walked right past the bar, out the door, and into the night. It took them over an hour to stop laughing, to finish their turkey and gossip and backhanded jokes. An hour before someone, probably her cousin Lindsay, picked up the pieces of what I'd destroyed. It was only then that they realized those were the finalized adoption papers for Jessica's son, Caleb, the kid I raised since he was 2. I was about to make it official, to give him my name, and I shredded it like it was junk mail. That's when the calls started. First 1, then 5, then 15. I didn't answer. I was already driving, no destination, just me and the steering wheel and a mind unraveling at 90 miles per hour. Here's what they didn't know. The shirt wasn't the betrayal. That was just the trigger. I had already known. I'd known for weeks. It started with her phone. Not even a late-night text or a lipstick-stained collar. No, it was how she guarded her phone like it was the nuclear codes. The way she'd angle the screen away from me, even to check the weather. And then there was the perfume. Not hers. Musky. Male. Cheap. It clung to her like guilt. But it was the hotel receipt that sealed it. Tucked in the glove compartment of her car, under a pile of gas station napkins. 2 nights at a downtown Marriott. Room service for 2. Champagne. A note scribbled on the back. "You felt so damn good last night." Round 2. Signed Z. I didn't explode. I didn't confront her. I watched. I followed. I saw them once. In his Audi. She was wearing a coat I bought her last Christmas, but underneath, she wore nothing but betrayal. He looked like a wannabe frat boy, hair slicked back, designer stubble, probably called himself a real estate investor. I don't know. I didn't need a name. That night, I booked a lawyer, drew up adoption papers, planned a Thanksgiving party to top all Thanksgiving parties. I needed a stage. I needed her to humiliate me one last time, so I could detonate everything. So when they gave me that shirt, when Jessica laughed like I was just the village idiot, I smiled because I knew something she didn't. I was done playing the fool. And this was only the opening act. I ignored the 30-second call and let the screen dim. The notifications were piling up. Jessica, her sister Megan, even Tyler tried calling. I imagined them in the living room, frantic, whispering, piecing together what had just happened like it was some kind of mystery. But it wasn't a mystery. Not anymore. They were just slow to catch up. My hands gripped the wheel tighter as I pulled into an empty lot near the lake. The same place I took Jessica on our second date, when she told me she'd never felt safe with anyone before. She said I made her feel chosen. That word stuck with me for years. Chosen. The irony burned now. I sat in the car, engine off, silence thick. My heartbeat was pounding in my ears, and all I could see was her smug face, laughing at that shirt. "It's just a joke." Yeah, well, so was our marriage. The first real message came in as I stared out across the water. Not a call. A voice memo. From Jessica. "Hey. Okay. Can you, stop being dramatic and pick up? You're scaring Caleb. It was just a joke. I didn't even make the shirt, Megan did. Can we please just talk like adults?" I played it again. And again. Her tone didn't match the situation. There was no remorse. No apology. No fear of loss. Just annoyance. She wasn't sorry for humiliating me. She was sorry I didn't roll over and take it like usual. I closed my eyes and remembered last Tuesday. She'd come home late. Too late. Hair slightly damp, like she'd showered somewhere else. I asked her how the girls' night was. She smirked, kissed me on the cheek, and said, "Relax, you sound like a jealous teenager." Then she disappeared into the bathroom for half an hour with her phone. 2 days later, she said she wanted to reconnect and let me to bed. It was the most forced, disconnected thing I'd ever felt. Like she was performing a scene, trying to prove something. But not to me. Maybe to herself. Maybe to Z. It's funny what betrayal does to your memory. You start replaying every moment, every pause in a sentence, every eye roll, every sudden work trip. It all lines up. It's like your life rearranges itself into a pattern of warning signs you were too blind to see the first time. My phone buzzed again. This time, a text from Megan. "You're being a fking a holy. You ruined Thanksgiving and Caleb's crying. Grow up." I didn't even flinch. These people had the emotional depth of a puddle. Megan was Jessica's twin in attitude, entitled, manipulative, never wrong. If Jessica was the storm, Megan was the wind fanning the flames. I finally drove home after midnight. The house was dark except for the living room lamp. Jessica sat on the couch in leggings and one of my old hoodies, one I hadn't seen her wear in months. Her eyes were swollen like she'd been crying, but with her, who knew what was real? She stood up slowly. "Where the hell have you been?" I dropped my keys on the counter and didn't answer. I was calm. Too calm. "I'm serious, Nick." Caleb was terrified. "He thought you were never coming back." I turned to her, meeting her gaze for the first time since I left the party. "Good." Her eyes narrowed. "What the hell is wrong with you? You tell me," I said, walking past her and into the kitchen. I poured a glass of water, drank it in silence. The air between us was thick, like the house knew something had snapped. "I don't get why you're making such a big deal out of a joke. You know Megan's humor is dark." "It wasn't the shirt," I said, setting the glass down. "Then what?" she snapped, arms crossed now, the hoodie swallowing her frame. I turned slowly. "The hotel receipt. The texts. The perfume. The nights you said you were with Lindsay but weren't." She froze. Her lips parted, just slightly, and I saw it. The flicker of fear. Not guilt. Fear. I stepped closer. "You want to lie again? I'll give you one more chance. One last lie before this whole thing burns to the ground." She swallowed hard. "You're being paranoid. Those texts weren't mine." "And the receipt?" "The note from Z." Her face twisted, and for a second, I thought she'd come clean. Instead, she scoffed. "You went through my **** car? That's so pathetic." There it was. Not denial. Not shame. Just deflection. Classic Jessica. "I trusted you," I said quietly. She rolled her eyes. "Then maybe you shouldn't have." I stepped back, stunned. Not by what she said, but how easily it came out. There was no love left in this house. Just ashes pretending to be furniture. I didn't sleep that night. Just sat in the guest room, staring at the ceiling fan spinning like it could blow away the mess I was drowning in. Jessica didn't knock. Didn't call out. Didn't even text. That alone told me everything I needed to know. By morning, the silence between us had turned into something physical, like a wall that couldn't be climbed or broken through. Just stood there, tall and cold and final. Caleb came into the kitchen, rubbing his eyes. The kid had no clue what was going on, and I hated that he was caught in the middle. He saw me, then looked past me toward the hallway. "Where's Mom?" "She's getting ready," I said. My voice cracked, and I hated how weak it sounded. He sat down and poured himself cereal like it was just another Tuesday. Maybe for him, it was. But for me, it was the beginning of the end. Jessica floated in 20 minutes later, sunglasses on like she was hungover, coffee in hand like nothing had happened. "Hey," she mumbled, and kissed Caleb on the head. She didn't even look at me. I watched her, waiting. Nothing. No apology. No attempt to explain. Just business as usual. When Caleb left for school, I finally asked, "So what's the plan?" She didn't even turn. "What plan?" "With us." She laughed under her breath. "Oh my God, Nick, you're not serious. You cheated on me." She turned now, finally. "Allegedly." I blinked, stunned at her audacity. "Allegedly. Do you have video footage? DNA? A confession? Because otherwise, this sounds like one of your classic jealous spirals." I nearly laughed, but it came out as a sharp exhale. "You are incredible." She smirked. "I've been told." I stepped toward her, voice low. "I saw you." In his car. You were wearing my coat. She bit her lip, not nervously, mockingly. Well, if it was your coat, maybe I was just thinking of you. You're disgusting. Funny, she said, sipping her coffee. That's not what you said when you begged me to marry you. The urge to scream was almost unbearable, but I swallowed it. She wanted a scene. She wanted to paint me as unhinged, bitter, broken. I wouldn't give her that. So I did the opposite. I smiled. Good, I said. Keep this version of yourself. Because when the lawyers see how you treated me, they're going to eat you alive. She didn't flinch. Lawyers? You think anyone's going to believe poor little Nick got bullied by his wife? Grow up. Caleb deserves better than this. Her face changed. Not much, just a flicker, her shield cracking. Don't you ***King bring him into this. I already did, I said, calm as a priest. Those papers last night, the ones I tore up, they were the adoption forms. I was going to give him my name. Not anymore. That got her. She stood frozen, lips parted, coffee cup trembling slightly. You bastard, she hissed. I stepped closer. I would have raised him like my own. I still love that kid. But I won't attach myself to you. Not anymore. The slap came fast. Sharp. Her hand left a sting across my cheek, but I didn't react. She was breathing heavy now. Not out of fear, but fury. Rage that she couldn't control me anymore. Get out, she spat. I nodded slowly. I was already leaving. I packed in silence. No yelling. No music. Just the hum of an ending. I didn't take much. Clothes, some pictures, my passport, the watch my dad gave me before he died. The rest could rot in that house with her. As I walked out the door, she called after me. Not with regret. Not with sorrow. With venom. You'll come crawling back, Nick. You always do. I paused on the doorstep. Turned just enough for her to see my eyes. Not this time. And then I left. Left the woman I loved. Left the version of myself that tolerated her. Left the home that wasn't really mine. But I wasn't broken. Not yet. I was something worse. Awake. I moved into a motel on the edge of town. One of those cheap places with flickering signs and stiff pillows, where you hear everything through the walls. Arguments, TVs, the occasional headboard slamming in the next room. It was perfect. Ugly, temporary, anonymous. Just like how I felt. The first night I lay there, I stared at the ceiling until the lines between the cracks started to look like veins in a dying body. My phone kept lighting up. Not just from Jessica, though she was relentless, flipping between begging and blaming, but from Caleb too. He left a voicemail. Hey, Mom's acting weird. Are you okay? When are you coming back? I played it 3 times before deleting it. Not because I didn't care, but because I cared too much. That kid didn't deserve any of this, but I couldn't be the one to fix it anymore. Not when his mother had shattered every ounce of who I was. On the 3rd night, I saw Z. I didn't plan it. I was walking into a liquor store 2 blocks from the motel, grabbing a 6-pack and maybe a bottle of something harder when I saw the Audi. Same license plate. Same smug, sleazy vibe. And then him, Zach, apparently. He stepped out, phone in hand, laughing like the world was just handing him everything he wanted. I followed him. No plan. No weapon. Just anger. Raw and unfiltered. He walked into a trendy little bar down the street. I waited 5 minutes, then followed. It was dimly lit, all polished concrete and overpriced cocktails. He was at the bar, talking to a brunette who clearly wasn't Jessica. Of course. I walked up beside him and said, calm as ever, she's married, you know. He looked over, confused, then annoyed. Excuse me. I leaned in. Jessica, my wife. He blinked. What the ***K are you talking about? I pulled my wallet out, showed him a picture of her and Caleb from last Christmas. This woman, the one you've been seeing at the Marriott. Recognition hit him like a wave. He sat back, eyes narrowing. You're her husband? Was. He exhaled slowly. She told me you were separated. Said you cheated first. I laughed. Out loud. Heads turned, but I didn't care. She lied to you, man. Just like she lied to me. That's what she does. She chews people up and spits them out before they even realize what's happening. He looked away, then back. Look, I didn't know. I wouldn't have. Save it, I said. I'm not here for your apology. I just wanted to see the face of the guy who helped blow up my life. Zach shifted uncomfortably. You gonna hit me or something? I shook my head. No. Hitting you would be doing her a favor. She'd twist it, make herself the victim. I'm not giving her another chapter in her story. He looked genuinely rattled. Not scared, just embarrassed. That made two of us. I walked out and never looked back. The next morning, Jessica was waiting outside my motel room. Her makeup was smeared, hair tied back in some rushed ponytail. No smugness, no power, just a mess of mascara and desperation. You told him? She snapped, arms folded tight. I unlocked the door, stepped inside. Yeah, I told him. She barged in behind me. Why the hell would you do that? Because I wanted him to know who he was dealing with. She stood there like she couldn't decide whether to scream or cry. You had no right. No, Jessica, I cut in, voice low. You had no right. To lie, to cheat, to humiliate me in front of your entire damn family while I paid for the turkey. She flinched. I pointed to the door. Get out. She didn't move. You still love me. I know you do. Doesn't matter anymore. You'll regret this. Already did. For the last 6 months. That's when she broke. Not in the way you'd expect. Not with tears, not with apologies. She laughed. A sharp, bitter sound that made my skin crawl. You think you're the hero in this story, she said. You're just a boring, weak man who couldn't keep me interested. I stood up, walked to the door and opened it. She stormed past me, shoulder bumping mine hard. As she walked off, she muttered, You'll die alone. I closed the door behind her. Slowly, deliberately. Then I sat on the bed, opened a beer, and let the silence soak in. It didn't feel good. It didn't feel like victory. But for the first time in a long time, it felt like freedom. The motel room smelled like dust and old air conditioning, but it was mine. Mine in the way prison is still technically yours. For days had passed since she stormed out, and each one peeled away a layer of whatever illusion I still had about Jessica, about love, about myself. I'd started making lists. Not to-dos, not goals, memories. Tiny moments from our marriage that now felt different in hindsight. The way she used to hide her phone under a pillow when she showered. The sudden business trips that always came after an argument. The silence she wrapped herself in when I asked if she was okay. One night, I wrote down, she never cried at our wedding. Not even during the vows. I thought it was strength. Now I know it was distance. My lawyer called that morning. I've reviewed everything. You have no shared assets in her name, and since you never finalized the adoption, there's no legal tie to Caleb either. Those words hurt more than they should have. No legal tie. Like I hadn't spent 5 years tucking that kid into bed, teaching him to ride a bike, sitting through school plays where he forgot half his lines. But the law doesn't measure love. What do you want to do? The lawyer asked. Burn it all down, I said. But the grown-up version. We filed for divorce that day. No fault. No custody. No more delays. That night, I got a text from Tyler, Jessica's brother. Of all people, he was the last one I expected to reach out. It was short. You free? I think you should hear something. We met at a diner off Route 12, halfway between the city and whatever small-town hellhole he lived in. He looked tired. Older. Like he'd been carrying something too heavy for too long. We sat in a booth. He ordered coffee. I didn't. I owe you an apology, he said. I blinked. That a real sentence coming from a Rivers sibling? He chuckled. Fair. But yeah, I was a dick to you. At the party, before that, during the marriage. I thought you were boring. Too safe. Too soft for Jess. And now, he stared into his mug. Now I know she's poison. He told me everything. That she'd been seeing Zach for almost a year. That she had a second phone she kept at work. That even before Zach, there were others. One of them was married. Another was a co-worker she threatened with a harassment complaint when he tried to break it off. Why are you telling me this now? I asked. Because I saw what that shirt did to you, he said. I saw your face. And then when I found out what you tore up, I realized we all became part of her game. He handed me a flash drive. Texts, screenshots, voicemails, all of it, in case you need proof. I didn't want it, but I took it. I needed to see the truth laid out. No more guessing, no more lies. Just facts. Cold and raw. Back in the motel, I plugged it in. And there it was. One message stood out. Sent from Jessica to Zach. He'll never leave me. He thinks loyalty is strength. I could FK someone on our kitchen table, and he'd still say we can work through this. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. Just stared at the screen until the words blurred. Loyalty was my pride. My shield. My identity. And to her, it was a punchline. I turned off the laptop, stood up, and looked at myself in the mirror. My eyes were bloodshot. My beard was patchy. I looked like a man halfway through a war he didn't sign up for. But beneath that, there was something else. Resolve. No more tears. No more replays. No more hoping she'd feel guilty. I wasn't going to heal by pretending it didn't happen. I was going to heal by remembering every damn detail and using it to never be that man again. The next morning, I put on a clean shirt, left the motel, and drove past the old house one last time. Jessica was outside, watering the garden like the world hadn't changed. She looked up, saw me. For a split second, her face softened. Maybe she thought I'd stop. Maybe she thought I'd beg to come home. I didn't. I drove on. Faster this time. Farther. Because that version of me, the one who stayed, he died the moment she called it a joke. A month passed. I got a new place, small, clean, no ghosts. 2 rooms and a balcony that overlooked a row of trees that actually looked like they belonged in a painting. It was quiet, peaceful. No heels clicking across the hallway at midnight. No perfume lingering where it shouldn't be. No lies hiding in phone notifications. Just me and the sound of my own thoughts slowly learning to breathe again. I started waking up earlier, drinking coffee black, going for runs. At first, it felt like I was acting out some cliché about men post-breakup, trying to find myself, like some life coach in a podcast. But eventually, it stopped being an act. I started feeling alive. Not happy, not yet, but solid. Real. I could look in the mirror and not hate what I saw. Then came the letter. It wasn't from Jessica. It was from Caleb. His handwriting hadn't changed. Still crooked and crammed into the top half of the page. There were spelling mistakes. A few words crossed out and rewritten. But the message hit me harder than anything else ever had. Dear Nick, I miss you. Mom says you're mad and that you're not coming back. I don't believe her. You always said family doesn't give up. I don't know what happened, but I just want you to come to my game next Saturday. I'm on defense now. I picked number 14 because you said that was your number in high school. Please come. Love, Caleb. I sat there for almost an hour holding that damn letter. Not crying. Just sitting. Trying to figure out how to answer a kid who still thought monsters only lived under his bed, not in the people who tucked him in at night. I went to the game. I stayed in the back, behind the bleachers, half hoping Jessica wouldn't see me. She did. Of course she did. She looked better than she had any right to. Tight jeans, boots, new hair color. But her smile died the second she saw me. Her face locked into this cold, practiced mask like nothing had touched her since I left. Caleb saw me after the third quarter. His eyes lit up like someone just told him Christmas got extended a month. He ran over during halftime, sweaty and smiling like his world had been set right again. You came. Wouldn't miss it, kid. We sat for a minute, watching his team huddle. He leaned in. Mom says you hate us now. I looked at him hard. That's not true. I hate what you did. I could never hate you. He nodded like he understood, though I knew he couldn't really. Not yet. Will you come again next week? I'll try, I said, and I meant it. Jessica approached after the game. Slowly, heels clicking against the pavement. Same walk she used to do when she wanted something. You had no right to show up, she said, arms folded, tone like venom. It's a public field, I replied. He's confused enough as it is. Because of you. She blinked, and for the first time, she didn't snap back. Just stood there, staring like she couldn't quite believe who I'd become. You really think walking away makes you the good guy? I stepped closer. No, I think staying would have made me the dumb one. She flinched, just slightly. Then she looked at Caleb, who was laughing with some teammates near the goalpost. You'll never be his real dad, she muttered. I nodded. Maybe not. But I was the one who showed up when he had nightmares. I was the one who taught him how to throw a football. I was the one who stayed. Until you gave me no choice. I turned and walked away before she could say anything else. That night, Caleb texted me a photo of the game. Him grinning, holding up 2 fingers, number 14, on his jersey. Thanks for coming, Nick. You're still my number 1. I stared at that message until the screen faded to black. That was the first time in months I actually smiled. Not the fake one I wore at dinner parties or during family photos. A real one. The kind that doesn't need an explanation. The past was ugly. Jessica was worse. But somewhere in the mess, I found something worth holding on to. Maybe I wasn't his legal dad, but I was still the man he looked for in the crowd. And that meant more than anything she could ever take from me. A few weeks later, I got a message from an unknown number. It was a photo, blurry, clearly taken in secret. Jessica, at some bar, sitting on a stool with her arm draped over a man I didn't recognize. Not Zach, someone older, maybe mid-40s, thinning hair, wedding ring still on. No caption. No name. Then another message came through. Just thought you should know who's picking up the pieces. I didn't respond. Didn't need to. I stared at the photo, not with jealousy or rage, but with a strange calm. Like watching someone else's drama unfold on TV. That's who she was now. A rerun. A show I'd watched too many times with the same ending. I deleted the messages. But something shifted in me that night. I realized Jessica wasn't done. Not by a long shot. She wasn't the kind of person who moved on. She was the kind who circled back when the attention dried up. The kind who didn't miss you, just missed controlling you. 2 nights later, it happened. I was coming back from a late shift. My buddy had opened a detailing garage and offered me some side work. Good pay, good hours, no office politics. I was dirty, exhausted, my shirt reeking of polish and rubber, when I saw her sitting on the stairs outside my apartment building. Jessica. At nearly midnight. She stood as I approached, clutching her arms like the cold was something she didn't expect. I just needed to talk, she said, eyes glossy. I don't have anything left to say. I replied, walking past her. Nick, wait. Please. I stopped at the door. Look back. What? She stepped closer. I'm sorry. I blinked, more from the surrealness of hearing that word come out of her mouth than anything. I was angry. And selfish. And stupid. You didn't deserve any of it. I said nothing. She kept going. You were good to me. Better than anyone. And IF asterisk headed up. I know that now. You knew it then, I said. You just didn't care. Silence. I miss you. I'm sure you do. But you don't miss me. You miss control. You miss having someone to blame when your world goes sideways. Her lip trembled. Not a performance this time. This was real. I lost everything. No, I said softly. You threw everything away. There's a difference. She looked like she was going to collapse. But I didn't step forward. I didn't offer comfort. That version of me was gone. Is there any way back? She whispered. I shook my head. There's nothing left to rebuild. She nodded slowly. Wiped her eyes. I guess I always thought you'd forgive me. I did, I said. But that doesn't mean I forget. She left without another word. I watched her walk down the street, smaller with every step. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not because I regretted anything, but because the final thread between us had snapped. And when it did, I finally felt it. Peace. Not just silence, but that deep, still kind that comes when you've walked through the fire, scorched and raw, and come out the other side with nothing left to burn. A few days later, Caleb texted me a drawing. Stick figures. A tall one with messy hair, holding a football. A smaller one next to him, grinning, in a jersey with 14 scribbled across the front. Coach says I've got your throw now, smiley face. I framed it. Because the truth is, I didn't come out of this story with nothing. I came out with a kid who still saw me as his hero, even when the world got ugly. I came out with self-respect I didn't even know I'd lost. I came out alive. And sometimes, that's enough. A few months passed. Spring crept in slowly, softening the sharp edges winter left behind. The trees outside my apartment started blooming again. Birds nested near my window. The world kept moving forward, whether I was ready or not. But I was. For the first time in a long time, I was. Caleb and I had a routine now. Saturdays were ours. Parks, movies, random diners with terrible service and the best milkshakes. He never asked about Jessica much. When he did, it was brief. A flash of curiosity, then gone. Like even his young mind understood some questions didn't need answers. One afternoon, as we were walking back to the car, he looked up at me and said, "Do you think people can stop being mean, or are some just stuck that way?" I stopped in my tracks. Looked at him. This kid with eyes too old for his age, heart still open, still learning. Some people are stuck, I said honestly. But we don't have to be around them when they are. He nodded like it made perfect sense. I dropped him off later that day, and as he waved goodbye, I realized I wasn't sad. Not like before. There was no ache. Just gratitude. Gratitude that I got to be a part of his story, maybe the only honest part. I went home, made coffee, sat on the balcony, and watched the wind move through the trees. Then I wrote something down. Not for Jessica. Not for Caleb. For me. You don't always get closure. Sometimes, you get clarity. And that's enough. Because here's the truth no one tells you. Closure isn't a moment. It's not her apology. It's not a revenge fantasy. It's waking up one morning and realizing you're no longer waiting for the pain to go away, because it already has. Jessica became a memory. One I didn't need to revisit. I didn't check her socials. I didn't ask around. I didn't care who she was hurting next. That part of me, jealous, desperate, needing answers, died somewhere between the torn adoption papers and the motel ceiling. All that mattered now was the man who walked out of the fire. Not bitter, not broken, just awake. And if I could leave anything behind for the next man who finds himself where I once was, it'd be this. If she laughs when they call you the biggest disappointment, walk away. Because nothing is more dangerous than a woman who finds joy in your pain. And nothing is more powerful than a man who learns to stop bleeding for people who cut him. That's how I ended it. Not with revenge, not with rage, just the quiet, certain steps of a man walking into the rest of his life, with no one's name on his back and no one's chains around his chest. Free. Finally, free.